The Lunchroom on RCI, Monday to Friday, 12:45 to 2 p.m. The Lunchroom. Informative, enlightening, provocative, engaging. The Lunchroom on RCI. Food for thought. The station that gives you, more lunch.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Lunchroom on Radio Caribbean International. It is Monday, the 28th of July, 2025, and this is program number 1415 of the Lunchroom. I'm your host, Calix George Jr. Now, in addition to radio 101.1 FM, you can also get us at our website, rcistlucia.com, and we are also available at our Facebook page. You just have to search for the official page of Radio Caribbean International. Please be sure to like and share that as well with your friends and family. And of course, if you want to call in to tell us what's on your plate, the number to do so is 452-3046. Again, 452-3046. And our WhatsApp number, that is 724-0008. You can call in. You can message in as well on that number. And again, it is 724-0008. Now, today we want to send out some birthday greetings to Mrs. Lily Walcott. Happy birthday to you, Lily, and we hope that you're having a fantastic birthday celebration. Also, birthday greetings to Miss Marcia Clark. Happy birthday to you and wishing you a wonderful day. And also to Mr. Al J. Scott. Happy birthday, and we do hope that you're having a marvelous celebration. Look back in time on this day, a bit of history for today. We go back to the year 1794, where the French revolutionary figure Maximilien Robespierre and 22 other leaders of the Terror, as it was known during that period in the French Revolution, were guillotined to thunderous cheers in Paris. In 1914, on this day, Austria-Hungary decided against mediation and declared war on Serbia, and that was the first declaration of war during World War I. In the year 1917, on this day, the Silent Parade, organized by James Weldon Johnson, 10,000 African American marched on Fifth Avenue in New York City to protest against lynching. 1943, on this day, Operation Gomorrah saw the RAF, the Royal Air Force, bombing over Hamburg, causing a firestorm that continued for quite some time, that killed up to 43,000 German civilians. 1976, on this day, saw the Tangshan earthquake, a 7.6 on the Richter scale, killing over 300,000 in northern China. That's the largest loss of life from an earthquake in the 20th century. And in the year 2005, on this day, July the 28th, the Provisional IRA, Irish Republican Army, called an end to its 30-year-long armed campaign in Northern Ireland. We now move on to our dish of the day. The daily dish is brought you the kind compliments of our good friends at Tiles Plus.
One tiles for your home, I see. Bathroom, kitchen, pantry. Need tiles for your balcony. Come down to Tiles Plus, satisfaction guarantee. Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus. Big tiles with unbeatable cost. Customer service, A+. With all kind of tiles, come down to Tiles Plus. We also got gasway and vanity. Box, doors, you'll see. Come down, don't mind nobody. We got the best tiles on island. Trust me. We are located Land Street in Castries, Bosses Grozile, and Clark Street in Beaufort. Telephone number 453-7939. Tiles Plus.
Serving now, the Daily Dish.
And welcome back to our program here at the Lunchroom on Radio Caribbean International. And of course, today we're seeing over in Grenada a Afrexim trade conference on Africa Caribbean Trade Summit being put on through the Afrexim Bank and the government of Grenada. And in fact, as part of that, the Prime Minister of St. Lucia is over taking in that matter. And there is, in fact, a pretty interesting article that was written on the matter of the recent visit by the President of Nigeria, His Excellency Bolo Ahmed Tinubu. Of course, that happened just at the beginning of this month, and the end of June into July, where, of course, for the first time we saw the head of state of Nigeria visiting a Caribbean country, and in fact, in visiting St. Lucia, meeting with members of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, heads of government, in addition, of course, to St. Lucian officials right here. A number of different agreements being signed onto. Interesting enough, prior to this visit, St. Lucia did not have diplomatic relations with Nigeria, a country that was effectively the most populous in Africa, one of the leading lights of growth, certainly the leader in West Africa, one of the largest economies in Africa. And it was quite telling, though, when we compared the dialogue, the discourse, with respect to what we saw over in Trinidad and Tobago, with the visit of Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, heading over to, of course, to Trinidad, a country very diverse in its demographics, in its ethnicity, ethnic makeup, with nearly half of the population is of Indian descent. And of course, you can look back to the 1800s, to that post-emancipation period, where we saw a rise in the demand for labor to offset the losses of labor that was experienced as a result of emancipation and individuals being able to get their own land, and they made their own living, and made their subsistence their own way after emancipation. And in the case of Trinidad and Tobago, in the case of Guyana in particular, we saw very large numbers of persons of East Indian descent coming from India, from all parts of India for that matter, in the 1850s, 1860s, and continued for a pretty good while throughout the 19th century. And partly, of course, because those were relatively recent colonies, British colonies, and so there was a lot of land available and a lot of demand for labor. And so we saw that presence coming out of that period. Of course, already existing was the African populations that were very much part of the culture and make-up of the Caribbean up to that point. And of course, here in St. Lucia as well, although we don't have Indian Arrival Day as a national holiday, we certainly did have our own Indian arrival, and of course that is part of the makeup and the culture of St. Lucia as well, to a lesser extent because the numbers were not as profound as in the case of, as I mentioned, Trinidad and Guyana. But as we noted at that time when we saw the visit of President Tinubu, that a significant proportion of the population has West African or African origin, and certainly if you want to even hone in a little bit more, because there are 54 countries on the African continent, a very significant part of the population also has roots in Nigeria in particular. And we've heard lots of commentary, lots of statements being made, lots of questions being asked. In large measure, it would appear from the opposition of the United Workers' Party as to why there should be such a visit of the head of state of Nigeria. And we had all sorts of statements being made and question marks being raised about why this should have been important. This was not the case in that of Trinidad and Tobago. As I mentioned, it's a pretty pluralistic situation where you've got a pretty large, I think nearly 47% of the population is East Indian. Not the majority, but close to that, roughly about that. And you did not really get that kind of questioning as to, well, why is the Prime Minister of India coming to Trinidad and Tobago? It seemed pretty obvious for everybody that if in fact a country is trying to strengthen its diplomatic relations, it's trying to position itself around in the world, quite often one of the areas that is the first port of call in terms of strengthening those diplomatic relations are countries where there is in fact some level of cultural significance and cultural and historic ties with that country. And so Africa is an obvious one. India is an obvious one. And that should not be very strange in any stretch of the imagination. When we've looked at the whole idea of the quote-unquote Western world, a lot of that is driven by the relations that were created as a result of European colonization. And so quite often the West is this region where we look at Europe, as well as where a lot of Europeans ended up settling in North America. And then, of course, by virtue of gain of that kind of association in the places like New Zealand and Australia, that's where we consider to be the West. And so this is nothing strange and should not have been anything strange. But, well, for the purposes of politics, I suppose stranger things have happened. But there was, in fact, a very interesting article written by Mr. Rahim Augustine Joseph on the matter of that visit. And I thought maybe it would be good to at least share it and to get a part of his opinion. It's actually, I'm going to read the part two because he has actually written another part on this matter. But maybe I should actually try to get the part one first, in fact. I'll see if I can try to pull it up as quickly as possible. But of course, the issues coming out of it in terms of identity and whether we still have an identity crisis in some respects when dealing with these issues of race is certainly still some of the challenges, I suppose, that we are getting from these types of visits. It certainly has exposed, what appears to be this underlying situation of issues of colorism, issues of race. And this is, of course, something that is not too foreign to us, especially in places like Guyana and Trinidad. The issues of race are very real, right? We just saw quite recently a change in government. The reality in the case of Trinidad is that the political entities, institutions, appear to be very much split along racial lines. Not to say, of course, that it is a complete whitewashing, that one party is all of one race or all of the other race. No, of course not. You get mixes there. But when you look at the United National Congress, the UNC, over in the case of Trinidad and Tobago, it is dominated by persons of East Indian descent. And in the case of the People's National Movement, the PNM, it is in fact dominated by persons of African descent. And so you find, well, and it also tends to pull in people of other smaller minority groups as well, like the Chinese as well, who support that party. And of course, we saw this year the leader becoming Stuart Young, who was ethnic Trinidadian Chinese. And of course, that has tended to be how their political situation has been spread over the time. Now, it goes down, of course, to criticism sometimes over the matter of appointments and how whether in fact that is a consideration within the political sphere. And in fact, the chairperson of the PNM quite recently got into some hot water by suggesting that the UNC, the current government, seemed to have been placing boards that, in the way he put it, were more reflective of a country like Bangladesh or India. And of course, he got scolded for being considered for that comment being a racist comment, albeit what he was in fact trying to characterize was the lopsided nature of the appointments in the case of the UNC. And of course, there was a back and forth and some level of analysis being done looking at what actually obtained during the period of the PNM as well. But be that as it may, let's come back to the matter of that article, which I've pulled up, and it's entitled, As I See It, Analyzing the Commentary on the Nigerian President's Visit, Legitimate and Otherwise, Part 1. Over the past few weeks, social media and popular call-in programs were ablaze with commentary during and after Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre's announcement that Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu would pay a state visit to St. Lucia. The visit would include meetings with our political officials and leaders of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, to discuss areas of collaboration between Nigeria and the OECS. The commentary I encountered reminded me of my previous column, The Myth of a Raceless Society, where I argued that our country harbors deep racial prejudices, elevating whiteness as superior and blackness as inferior. These biases, rooted in enslavement and colonialism, persist in the post-independence era, masked by the myth of racial harmony, sustained by tourism economics and an unwillingness to confront the plantation mindset. Some of the reactions to the Nigerian president's visit confirmed that this myth extends beyond our domestic politics, shaping how we view Africa and black people globally. However, to avoid conflating legitimate and illegitimate critiques, we must separate the substantive concerns from the muck and assess the valid arguments that should have dominated the discourse. One major point of contention was the announcement by St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority, SLASPA, that both of the island's airports would temporarily close for the president's arrival. Many questioned this decision, noting that such measures had not been taken during previous state visits. Their concerns about the necessity of the closures and the potential inconvenience to the visitors in our tourism over-dependent economy were valid. These questions should have been addressed through a press conference or direct engagement by SLASPA and relevant government agencies rather than relying on press releases and infographics, which have been a crutch or even a weapon when officials avoid public scrutiny. This reflects a broader crisis in what Matthew Bishop calls Westmonster, where public officials, especially in the public service, neglect their duty to justify decisions. After all, it is the public service, and a persistent lack of engagement erodes trust in governance. Officials must understand that their responsibility extends beyond technocratic advice. It includes explaining decisions to the people affected by them, fostering confidence and buy-in. Of course, the likely response would be that airport closures were necessary for security. That may be true, but the validity of a message depends not just on its content, but on how and by whom it is delivered. C'est pas ça ou fait, mais manière ou fait. In a democracy, transparency and accountability are paramount. When communication is lacking, speculation and propaganda thrive. We need a culture of justification in our politics, one that prioritizes the why behind decisions, not just the what. It shouldn't matter whether officials deem the public's questions troublesome or partisan. Governance requires justifying decisions to all citizens because within the muck lies an opportunity for enlightenment, especially on issues the public has little reason to understand given their rarity. The overlooked economic concerns. Other critical questions overshadowed by 1. Partisan anti-intellectualism disguised as foreign policy, and 2. Selective outrage over Nigeria's domestic affairs dictating our foreign relations, and 3. Racial prejudices, 4. Ignorance, and 5. An unfounded affinity for the West were those about the visit's economic cost. Was St. Lucia bearing the full expense, or was it shared among OECS members? What was the cost-benefit analysis? These concerns cannot be dismissed. Public funds finance government expenditures, so when citizens ask where the money gone, officials must provide answers. Justifying spending builds trust in decision-making. At every turn, we must reject the illiberal tendencies of representative democracy, where, as Rousseau noted, voting becomes both an exercise in and surrender of sovereignty. The moment we mark our X, we cede power to representatives. But democracy, as former U.S. President Barack Obama said, is not self-executing. It requires citizenship regardless of who holds the power. And let me just move on into part 2. I part ways with those who question the purpose of the Nigerian president's visit, not merely in terms of tangible benefits, but by casting doubt on whether Nigeria, given its well-publicized challenges, can offer St. Lucia anything at all. The underlying sentiment seems to be, how can a nation assist others when its own house is not in order? But which country is entirely free of fundamental issues? Consider our closest allies, the UK and the US, both grappling with poverty, inequality, and other systemic flaws. Yet, their problems have never deterred our engagement with them. Turn the question around. Does St. Lucia, with its own challenges, lack of legitimacy to share expertise with other nations, lack the legitimacy to share expertise with other nations? The selective scrutiny of Nigeria's visit is telling. Prominent figures from Western governments and monarchies have come to St. Lucia without public outcry. No demands to justify their presence, no dismissals of their relevance. In a society that claims to be raceless, we must ask, what fuels this sudden insistence on a purpose-driven mindset regarding foreign policy and the Friends of St. Lucia? Is our stance rooted in the Comptonian or Bustamante tradition? Quote, our country is aligned with the West, and we cannot change geography. Or should we aspire to Errol Barrow's vision, quote, friends of all, satellites of none? Then there are the allegations of corruption against the Nigerian president, which critics argue should preclude engagement. This is unfair, as the president has not been convicted of any crime and deserves due process, a principle we demand for our own citizens. Moreover, foreign relations transcend individual leaders. Presidents come and go. Diplomatic ties endure, potentially benefiting our people long after. I do not dismiss the need for principled leadership. There are cases where non-engagement is justified. But why is corruption selectively invoked to delegitimize certain relationships? Have we ever used corruption to delegitimize any other foreign leader, even when they have been found guilty? The issue is not whether moral leadership should guide geopolitics, but why our outrage is so unevenly distributed. When have we severed ties over racism, sexism, or support for genocidal wars? Do we adopt a position of non-engagement with those who formerly enslaved our ancestors and have refused to pay reparations for their crimes against humanity? The usual rebuttal is economic. Quote, "The West fuels our tourism, we must engage." End quote. But aren't principles only principles when they are inconvenient to stand by? Or is it that our considerations are only economic, being branded as ideological and values just because we have not realized the potential benefits from Nigeria? Or is there an unspoken fear that aligning with Africa risks alienating our wealthier allies? Disdain for blackness? Some online commentary, which forms part of the muck, reinforced the myth of a raceless society. Many responses to the president's visit invoked tropes of voodoo, witchcraft, and irrational fear, a stark contrast to the reception afforded Western leaders. Dr. Travis Weeks is instructive and accurate in saying that these, quote, images of Nigeria are born out of the cultural exploitation of the religions of Africa and the corruption of African folklore for Christian religious crusades, particularly in popular film, such that when one sees the credits, one realizes that these movies are funded by Christian missions whose purpose is to tarnish, ridicule, and denigrate African religion and culture, end quote. To illustrate, I compile a sample of social media reactions to the visit. The empirical evidence I gathered was that much of the criticism was not just illegitimate, but steeped in prejudice. Some may argue these voices are unrepresentative of broader sentiment. Perhaps, but they reveal a troubling undercurrent in our collective psyche. This visit should not have been controversial. St. Lucia and Nigeria share deep historical and cultural ties. An 1815 British census recorded that of the 16,282 enslaved people in St. Lucia, 3,488 were African-born, with 34% from Nigeria. Our strong ancestral bond is undeniable. St. Lucian-born Sedani Alexander became Nigeria's first post-independence Chief Justice, the first non-Nigerian to hold the office. Another son of the soil, architect Neville Skeet, reportedly contributed to the design of Nigeria's first central bank. This visit was an opportunity for public education to dispel colonial myths and remind young St. Lucians that success is not confined to the West. The visit was also important because any student or practitioner of international politics and diplomacy would recognize that within this geopolitical climate, our traditional allies, as evidenced by their anti-immigration, jingoistic, and nationalistic foreign policy positions, are turning more inward, and as such lessen the policy space for the Caribbean to rely on their goodwill and benevolence. We've seen it in U.S. aid cuts, climate finance neglect, Stonewall reparations, and the weaponization of development assistance. The message is unambiguous. Small states must look elsewhere. As such, the Caribbean must point du vent avant du vent point and explore South-South cooperation. Nigeria, one of Africa's largest economies of over $500 billion plus in GDP, and most populous nation, over 200 million people, offers untapped potential for trade, tourism, diversification, and investment. St. Lucia has already benefited from Afreximbank's concessional loans for infrastructure. This visit could expand collaboration in renewable energy, tech, agriculture, and creative industries. Nigerian expertise in telecommunications, oil, and agro-processing could prove invaluable. The African Union recognizes the diaspora as its sixth region, and CARICOM's Africa CARICOM summits signal growing ties. St. Lucia must adopt an agile foreign policy, friends of all, satellites of none, cherry-picking areas of cooperation and engagement based on values, economic, social, and political priorities, as well as history. The Nigerian president's proposals for education exchanges, visa waivers, and cultural cooperation are promising, but success hinges on public vigilance and government accountability. Above all, we need a decolonial re-education, a dismantling of the idea that progress flows only from the West. And that again is by Raheem Augustine Joseph, who is just 24 years, St. Lucian, who has been obtained his LLB from University of the West Indies, Cave Hill campus. And I believe he's also now a Commonwealth Caribbean Rhodes Scholar, furthering his education as well. That's all for us for our dish of the day. And we're going to take in our weather report at this time and then head back into taking some calls.
One tiles for your home, I see. Bathroom, kitchen, pantry. Need tiles for your balcony. Come down to Tiles Plus, satisfaction guarantee. Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus. Big tiles with unbeatable cost. Customer service, A plus. Did all kind of tiles. Come down to Tiles Plus. We also got gasway and vanity. Books, doors, you'll see. Come down to mind nobody. We got the best tiles on island. Trust me. We are located Lance Road in Castries, Bosses Grozile, and Flax Street in Beaufort. Telephone number 453-7939.
This has been The Daily Dish.
Girl, I've been so stressed searching for the perfect tiles to complete my home.
Really?
Yeah, it's always the same white, beige, and gray tiles with the tile stores. Like they're all buying from the same place. You're the design expert. Help me, please. I'm fed up.
What are you looking for?
Something different. Something that says Caribbean beauty and suits my personality. Something vibrant and classy with a little razzle-dazzle.
Okay, Ms. Razzle Dazzle, I know just the place. Island Style Tile and Bath, they're my #1 store for everything tile. And with their new In Living Color collection, you'll find the most gorgeous styles to give you that splash of Caribbean flair you're looking for.
That sounds perfect.
I'll even take you myself and throw in a free design consultation.
I'll never say no to that, sis. I can't afford you anyway.
Visit our Island Style showrooms in Castries, Rodney Bay, and Viewfort, or call 450-452 or 453 Tile. We'll help bring your vision to life in living color.
This is Radio Caribbean International. It's now time for the weather news.
So of course on the World World, it's now time for your weather report as of 12 noon today, presented by Island Style Tile and Bath. The forecast for St. Lucia Valley for the next 24 hours, winds will be blowing from the east near 20 miles per hour or 31 kilometers per hour. The weather fair to partly cloudy with a few brief light to moderate showers. The forecast for the Lesser Antilles, fair to partly cloudy skies with a few showers. And the tropical weather outlook, the Atlantic high pressure system will generate light to moderate easterly winds over the Lesser Antilles during the next few days. Low level clouds shifting along the wind flow will produce a few light showers over the region during the forecast period. A tropical wave located over the eastern tropical Atlantic is moving westward in near 8 miles per hour or 13 kilometers per hour. Also, tropical cyclone formation is not expected over the tropical Atlantic during the next 7 days. And this has been your weather forecast as of 12 noon today, presented by Island Style Talent Bar.
This has been RCI's Weather News. For more information, call the Weather Hotline at 454-3452. RCI 101 number 1.
Girl, I've been so stressed searching for the perfect tiles to complete my home.
Really?
Yeah, it's always the same white, beige, and gray tiles with these tile stores. Like they're all buying from the same place. You're the design expert. Help me, please. I'm fed up.
What are you looking for?
Something different. Something that says Caribbean beauty and suits my personality. Something vibrant and classy with a little razzle dazzle.
Okay, Ms. Razzle Dazzle, I know just the place. Island Style Tile and Bath, they're my number one store for everything tile. And with their new In Living Color collection, you'll find the most gorgeous styles to give you that splash of Caribbean flair you're looking for.
That sounds perfect.
I'll even take you myself and throw in a free design consultation.
I'll never say no to that, sis. I can't afford you anyway.
Visit our Island Style showrooms in Castries, Rodney Bay, and View Fort, or call 450-452 or 453 Tile. We'll help bring your vision to life in living color.
And welcome back to the lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. And of course, the number to call in to tell us what's on your plate today, it is 452-3046. Again, 452-3046. And our WhatsApp number, it is 724-0008. Again, 724-0008. And looks like the phone line's already blinking, so I'll say no more and head to the phones. Good afternoon. Welcome to the lunchroom.
Good afternoon, George.
How are you doing, caller?
Not bad.
Wonderful.
Yeah, but what I notice is the Chinese never stop coming in Trinidad.
Well, I don't know what you mean by that. But you mean they're still? Well, I mean, China is for a long time was the most populous country in the world, eh? So it has always had a very large diaspora spread all around the world. You know, you have so many places. Countries you'll go to and you'll find a Chinatown. You know, and so that's a very long tradition.
And the other thing I noticed, when no matter how big is the building going up, you'll never see a Chinese come and hold a fork or a pick or a shovel. You never see a Chinese do that.
I'm not sure.
You there with me?
I'm not sure the point that you're making about.
No, yeah, well, they keep coming in, but there's something going between the top Chinese in Trinidad. You don't see a Chinese do manual labor.
Sorry, you don't see. I didn't hear the last part you said. You broke up.
I broke up. You don't see a Chinese do manual labor.
Oh, manual labor. Well, I don't know that you say that, caller, but then the other reality is that China has been exporting its skills through a number of its projects and development projects all around the world, and a lot of that involves the export of, you could say export, but the use of its human resources in a lot of major projects. I mean, that's one of the areas that they've been able to project their strength by undertaking so many infrastructure projects all around the world, from ports and railways and airports and bridges, and there's a lot of Chinese engaging in manual labor, if you want to call it that, on these projects, as well as, of course, the skilled people on those projects. The project managers and engineers are also Chinese, so they are coming with a full.
Yeah, I think you have a point.
So they are coming with a full gamut. I mean, that's been one of the arguments that has been used against. Remember when there was a change in diplomatic relations right here in St. Lucia, And we saw a number of major projects being undertaken through the Chinese government. Remember, there was this call.
The Golden Hope.
There was the point I was being made was that the Chinese were coming with their own labor, right? On the stadium, on the schools that they were building. So they were, in fact, engaging in manual labor, right? So I don't think, well, I mean, even when you look back to way back in the 19th century and whatnot, and the railways in the United States, a lot of them were built by Chinese labor. So they've not shied away from a lot of hard work. So
now, the other thing Chinese in Guyana, they there before the Indian, before the Spanish. They live alongside the river, like the Bobbies.
So are you referring to the native populations in?
They are native Chinese.
Native Chinese. They are okay.
Chinese.
Well, I'm not sure that they're Chinese, but they might be Amerindian people, but their features might appear to be
Chinese feature.
Right. Now, I mean, remember again the whole general migration of the world, out of Africa. You saw very early on a lot of populations going into China, and it was Asia, and it was those populations in Asia, in Siberia, that ended up migrating into the Americas many thousands of years ago. So there are, in fact, very strong genetic similarities between those populations of people who then became the indigenous populations of the Americas, with the people out of Siberia, out of parts of Asia. So I mean, that's why you might say that they may look in some respects that way. But I mean, we've seen so many movements of people, though, and it is certainly very, very fascinating. In fact, that's an area of study right now that is being certainly growing as a result of a lot of the DNA analysis in the world right now, looking at the migration patterns of people over hundreds of thousands of years. So it is very fascinating that you're saying that there were people who look Chinese. They are
Chinese. Real look. They look everything Chinese.
Right.
And have a little investigate that they live alongside the river, the Bobbies, the SCKO, alongside those rivers there in Guyana.
Well, yeah, but I don't know that they would have been speaking quote unquote Chinese, but quite likely they may have been speaking some sort of maybe Arawakan languages or what have
by
you.
now, so they English.
Yeah, but I mean the point that you're making is also very interesting, because the Chinese, even within the Asian sphere, were also very. I mean, they were explorers. They were doing their own colonial explorations, around Southeast Asia, and so the spread of Chinese influence in Asia is significant. I mean, look at even the Japanese. The language is influenced by Chinese language and the character systems, and so you have a lot of cultural spread and influence. When it comes to
and
China.
Trinidad have a lot of Chinese, Trinidad have a lot of Chinese.
Well, yeah, although, I mean, it's all relative. It's all relative, more than what came to the other parts of the Caribbean. But you do have, fairly large Chinese populations in Jamaica, in Trinidad, in Guyana. Yeah. All right.
Good afternoon.
All right, then.
George.
Thanks very much for that contribution, caller, and have yourself a good one. And, of course, some very interesting points being made in that article earlier on by Mr. Raim Augustine Joseph, speaking to the duplicity of reactions between for that visit of President Tinubu, and, of course, making the point that we would not react that way when it came to other leaders. I mean, you think back, for example, I think around 1986, 1987, we saw visits by Her Majesty the Queen, and then later on, I think we saw visits by a visit by Pope John Paul II, and I think they were on both occasions there were national holidays, right? The country was closed down, people were given a holiday. Now, when we speak about economic impact, I mean, having a national holiday has an economic impact, right? You are in fact causing for individuals to stay home, not go to work, and what have you. And of course, we understand why. I mean, we're not saying that it should not have happened, but we understand the context within which those national holidays were given, that these individuals were coming and there was some cultural affinity with the population, especially in the case, I guess, of a religious cultural affinity, in the case of St. Lucia at that time. And so, therefore, it was important to provide this national holiday. But even more so, in the execution of the logistics surrounding state visits, right? It's quite often necessary to provide those types of placements, because remember, in those events, no doubt there would have been people who would have wanted to see the visiting head of state. Of course, the Pope would have been the head of state for the Vatican, and of course they would want to be able to go to whatever events or rallies that were being put on for that. So these types of visits can, in fact, be very demanding on the logistics of a country, especially a small country like ours. And so you will find that sometimes you will get closures. In some instances, you may get, whole highways being closed. So the idea of having a national holiday is to we're going to reduce on the amount of traffic on the road. We're going to allow for more people to be able to participate in the events and that sort of thing. So, and clearly, the point being made is that we did not see any issue with those events and those actions being taken at that time for those national visits. And in the case right now, why then the difference in tone? Why then the difference in the level of concern being put forward? And of course, so very, very useful analysis with respect to that. And of course, raising the issue that is underlying, regardless of the matter of race and the matter of this idea that we have a raceless society. And I think the point being made by Mr. Augustine Joseph is that we don't, right? And that is a myth. And there will be issues that come up regarding this matter of race identity and how it in fact impacts on societies. And of course, it also impacts on a lot of other things, voting patterns, where people decide to provide their support. We've spoken about it in the case of Trinidad. And we've seen quite a lot made of it, of course, within the politics of St. Lucia. And even quite recently, I think I heard the leader of the opposition, Mr. Shastney, raising this issue of race and how he feels, I suppose you could say, somewhat prejudiced because of people viewing him in a certain light. I mean, it's interesting because just over the weekend, in fact, I caught a glimpse of a book which I think I had gone through some time ago by Mr. Michael Shastney. It's called Room at the Top, where he gives an autobiography of his life. And one of the things that he was raising was the challenge of racism, and how he faced racism in different ways, I suppose, in outside of St. Lucia as well. He faced racism. And so now, of course, we're hearing this cry regarding Mr. Shastney saying that he is now the one who is facing racism because he is perceived to be white. And of course, the corollary to that is that the issue tends to be, the underlying issue tends to be that there is a superiority and a preference that is given to persons if in fact they are seen to be white, or if they're coming out of a particular cultural space. They sometimes are given a preferential treatment. And of course, we've heard the complaints even within our public services and our civil services, or customer services here in St. Lucia, where sometimes people perceive that individuals are provided with greater preference or service if in fact they may be one color or the other. Recently, a friend of mine was saying that in her opinion, that in fact they, in the case of St. Lucia, it's not seen as much that in fact an African American visitor is treated in a similar way as a white American visitor. But the concept, though, that there is some sort of racism against an individual because they are white, it's a very interesting one. And but that has been the thrust that some supporters of the United Workers' Party are trying to push. In fact, it seems to be a very much ongoing matter, because one of the texts which I noticed, an excerpt of a comment that was made by a lawyer of note here, no longer living in St. Lucia, Miss Nigel Tousse, raising this issue about this concept that people are somehow showing prejudice against Mr. Chasney because of the perception of his ethnicity. And just to quickly read her statement in response to somebody who seemed to have been suggesting just that, she made a very interesting statement. She said, "Stop. Nobody dislikes Chasney because he is white. That's just not true. In St. Lucia, Chasney was selected because he is white." And this, of course, is her opinion. "Chasney remains because he is white. End of story. Stop playing. If you do not know and understand St. Lucia, have several seats and continue to follow U.S. politics. You're better there. St. Lucia is," and this is what she says, "a shabby-loving, light-skin pushing, white folk adoring nation. It has always been so here in St. Lucia, so just stop. If the people are now saying they prefer a leader that looks like the majority, it's not because they hate Mr. Chasney. It's because they are developing the love for themselves and pride in who they are. Because I love me, it does not mean I hate you." And that's, of course, the opinion being shared by Miss Tousse. Let's take in a call at this time. As we head to the phone lines, take this one in. Good afternoon and welcome to the lunchroom. How are you doing, sir?
All right, and your people, they okay?
Very good, thanks. How are you?
Quickly, I'm brilliant. I didn't hear the full context, but she got the point across. The fact that I'm showing, the people appreciating for who they are, themselves for who they are, don't mean they hate you. It means, we purging ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from that kind of thinking.
Well, there was that kind of pushback when people started pushing Black Lives Matter.
Yeah,
right? Remember the All Lives Matter push, that...
Anytime we try and talk about ourselves and build pride in ourselves, and you see, these choruses is usually led by black people, that we pushing racism and, self for yourself is not necessarily racism. It's not, that's not racism. You're not against anybody, but you're loving yourself more. And then at last, we're trying to appreciate that, hey, listen, whatever.
And in most instances...
A black person could lead us, and lead us all right.
Yeah, I mean, in most... In most instances, it's actually... I mean, all cultures need to teach about their culture. Right? You find Chinese will do that, of course. The Jewish culture will promote Jewish culture.
What happened to these people?
So countries do certainly teach their own history, teach their own culture. Can it potentially cause problems? Yes, but then it has to be balanced. Yeah. So
those who feel colonialism had a conscience, they could go back to the wretched thing of existence. Yeah, they could go back to it. And maybe re-elect the gentleman as our leader again. As their leader, because he won't be my leader for sure. Because never can happen in this day and age. After all, black people struggle. That's what it is. No, it's not going to happen. But quickly,
Yes, caller, go ahead.
I don't know if you followed cricket at all over the weekend.
Oh no, I didn't get a chance to. No.
But you don't follow cricket, Gaston, you don't follow the game, my brother.
Well.
To what's going on current.
I wish I had the opportunity to, but I just couldn't.
Yeah, but you still could look and read it something, man.
Okay, but what are you highlighting for us?
Yeah, I recall your good friend, our friend Red Pereira.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah, you were saying you were suggesting that we need to tweak the thing. Big Test cricket, do you remember that?
Yes, I do recall that, yes.
Yeah, but maybe that will work for the minnows if West Indies play in Zimbabwe or not even Bangladesh will entertain that.
Well, there's also a push caller to have a 2-tier system, right, for tests.
Yeah.
So that we may very well end up in the second tier.
Shouldn't be playing against these kind of teams like Australia, because you see what is happening there. Australia has played 3 test matches and 4 2020s. All right, on the tour so far, and they have won all the games comprehensively. All the games comprehensively, my brother. And Australia is doing that with a lot of rookies, a lot of younger players, Some of the main players, I mean, we need, there's some serious, for West Indian cricketers, for us as a people, for us to realize that if we lose that thing we had, which is called that brand, the West Indies cricket. I don't know what else will get to represent us.
The brand is what makes us. The brand is what allows for the Purans and the Gales to be able to become so great. Eh? I mean, they have their own success, but it allows them that opening as well.
Yeah, but we seem to think our brand now is the greatest party in nation, cricket party nation, is the Caribbean.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I remember Red Sparrow talking about, he's my friend, but I find sometimes some things that the things he said. He said that we need to look at 4 days test, as if test was boring. Test boring? There's a series going on in England. Calix, you with me?
I'm with you, caller. Go ahead.
India versus England. And, I mean, imagine a test match play over 5 days. And the test match end up in no result, a draw, And from the ball 1 to the last ball they bowl, is excitement, Is excitement, my brother. I mean, it's difficult to listen or watch a test cricket over 4 days, 5 days, 5 days, without any break. But you guarantee, if you stop watching after any length of time, and you come back within a due season, and after a while, you still up for some serious, a serious battle, war between ball and bat, and wits and mind and, all the other things that go, your mental capacity and your spiritual, being. And I mean, the thing draw was a draw. And in there, you had one team making 600 and change. One person in 300 and something. And asked to make, when they come back and bat, England had a lead about 311. So, which means India had to make 311 before they make England bat again. And they started the second innings. In the first over, they lost 2 wickets for no runs, I mean, India was dead and buried. Then, the other partnership that yielded 177 runs. And they tried to make their way to the deficit, which was 311, at least to end up giving England some runs. But ideally, they were trying to bat out the rest of the test match. And that's not easy to do on the last day of a test match. Last inning, sorry. And because England had more than enough time to bowl them out. And before they reached the deficit, England took the 2 batsmen who had the long partnership, Gill and Rahul. And at the wicket, because the best batsman, Pant, couldn't have bat, one of the best batsmen. He got injured in the first innings. And India, I mean, everybody had write them off already because you just had 2 all-rounders, Washington Sundar and Ravindra Jadeja, in the wicket, and the rest, the bowlers. And these 2 all-rounders stood up, colleagues, and made a unbeaten partnership of 200 and something. Each of them scoring a century. No, when you watch that, and the last day, see the Indians cheering because they man actually turn around that and draw that.
But caller, I mean, I understand it completely, but the passion that an Indian has for cricket, I mean, it's almost at a spiritual level. Yeah, it's religion for them.
Yeah, but
it is the sport.
To that, by us.
Well, it might have been, but it seems that we've backslided. We're no longer adherents in that way. And
ours wasn't far from that,
well, maybe so.
Somehow that passion gets.
It's gotten watered down. It's gotten
watered down, diluted. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we spread ourselves thin over many more sports.
But we're not playing enough cricket. You don't have enough people getting in on it. There's not enough of a drive on it, and as you rightly said, people are looking at all other forms of other sports now, especially football. That's and a lot of that is.
But now there's more opportunity now in cricket.
There is a far more opportunity, more than ever before. Not like before when you could have only maybe gone to county cricket. To spend time. You've got lots and lots of opportunities. So
if you put in what is necessary.
I agree with you that at the local level especially, at our various local association levels, at the Ministry of Sport levels, there has to be a plan that involves all of these different agencies in terms of an overall strategy. They have to play a major part.
George, we have to examine our sports strategy. If we were so advanced in cricket, and now we spreading ourselves thin.
Yeah. And we don't have an excuse.
Our human resources.
We don't have an excuse. But I honestly think we definitely need to look at New Zealand when it comes to sport. Because New Zealand is about the same size as the West Indies in that regard, right? About 5 million people. Albeit, of course,
and New Zealand have All Blacks rugby competition.
They've got a lot of different, yes, exactly.
Yeah, and New Zealand make World Cups in football.
In fact, I think New Zealand. There's one analysis that's done, and New Zealand is one of the best performing at the Olympics as well. When you look at their performance, so they've got a very, very good sports program. We need to look at that. We need to study it. It's not about reinventing the wheel, but we have to We have to take a page from them.
Good, brilliant. I love that. It's better we look at that, the template New Zealand has, and try and see if we could replicate certain elements of it, because population-wise, size-wise, everything, there are a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah.
Definitely. Thanks for that call, caller. Have a good one.
Right, good.
All the best.
Thanks.
Take care.
Irene.
And we're going to have to leave it there for today. Hope you can join us again tomorrow for another program of the Lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. Take care. Have a good one.